Look, detectives combing through the hood looking for a corpse. Draco hitting, I don't think your body can endure the force. I whipped the fish up with a fucking hanger or a fork. Told that bitch, go ahead, sniff what you want, there's plenty more to snort. I had an outstanding warrant for a short. Turned myself in, rocking Louis and all my jewelry, I wore the court.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am thrilled to bring to you today Chief Warrant Officer 3 Ama M Adair. Ama, thank you so much for joining us on Hard to Kill. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me, Nick.
And I forgot to put in there as well, also esteemed author. I see you got a bunch of books that you've been cranking out. How's that been going?
It's actually going great. I've got the fourth one. I'm hopefully gonna finish up here in the next couple of days, and then it'll go into the editing process. But yeah, writing's been good, and I know you've probably talked to a few other authors, I think, and they can probably tell you that even if you're writing, nonfiction or fiction, it doesn't really matter. It's cathartic in its own right. So it's not only is it a creative outlet, but it can have a lot of good, mental health and other therapeutic properties as well.
So that's just something that I'm experiencing with. So I never really thought I would. I'm very introverted, and I never really thought I would be getting into podcasting or doing any things that I'm doing now. But Doc and I talk about it all the time. The therapeutic, whatever it's called, that you get from this is unexpected but great. The feeling of just, I don't even know the feeling, an adjective to describe it afterwards. It's like a huge stress just coming off of your shoulders. Yeah, it's awesome. It's better than any therapy I've ever done. I don't know if you have any input on that, but please.
I do actually. So mental health is a big thing for all of us, and it's something that's been stigmatized for so long that it's great how much people are actually starting to talk about it. But I was a stress casualty while I was still active duty. And so I learned the hard way to appreciate mental health. I did the same thing we all did. I just sucked it up and kept pushing. I didn't want to admit there was something I couldn't handle. That was just, counter to my nature. And, it bit me in the ass.
Not only that, the military is so alpha minded, it's, for myself, a lot of my older heads are guys that trained me they kind of instituted that into me at a very young age in the military. And it's just exactly how you put it. It's very stigmatized. It's not something you want to put out there. You don't want to be the weak link.
Oh, no. And when I finally went to therapy, it was without question like the hardest thing I'd ever had to do. It's like I would much rather go back to SEER and have them beat my ass again and then to go to therapy. But it worked. And so it turned me into a believer, and I became quite the advocate for people seeking out help and not becoming a stress casualty. But now, even into retirement, as I transitioned out, I was cocky. I was like, I got this. I know what I'm going to get into. I have a plan. This is going to be nothing. I had some reactions and feelings I did not anticipate. So I'm back in therapy.
They're overwhelming at first, I feel like.
It's weird because you don't anticipate the angles it comes from, I think. At least that's the way it was for me. I was like, I did not expect to feel certain ways. And then really it's an embarrassment of riches. Suddenly my schedule's mine. I can do whatever I want. And I'm still trying to get to yes with everything. Like, I gotta go, gotta push. And then one day I was just like, oh, wow.
Well, I can see from your resume how busy you must have been. And I can say for myself, the op tempo is so high while you're in the military and you're doing your things. You don't really have the time to look at yourself and be like, oh, this is going on, I can address this. The self-reflecting you really don't have time to do. So when you get out, it really, I don't know. I feel like you definitely have more time to, check on those things and dig into them. And, when you haven't felt feelings in so long, at first it's like, whoa.
Well, no, it hits you all at once because you hit it right there. Op tempo's right here. You never, like, using that whole stress continuum, you're always probably somewhere in between yellow and red. Let's call it orange. You're always kind of riding that line. And when you drop down, you're only hitting yellow. It's like, I didn't know what green was. Like, people would ask me, it's like, so what do you do when you relax? I'm like, relax.
Yeah, what the hell does that mean?
Like, does not compute. I don't understand what you're asking me right now. So I think that's when I had to kind of like really felt everything that I just wasn't paying attention to. It wasn't, my normal was here, and to even try to fathom what it was like down here, it's like voodoo magic. It's like, I don't understand this.
I love that you're even going in on this, because that's really what we try to center the pod around, because myself and Doc had an extremely kinetic deployment in Afghanistan, and when we both came back, we were kind of in the ladder of our career, and we were kind of getting out, and we went through, I don't want to say the typical, but we went through some significant issues, and I think Doc can attest to this as well. We were not prepared for it, and we kind of just thought, we're just going to get out, we were going to do our thing, and everything was going to be fine and dandy. And that was not the case. And I truly believe that this is, all around right now. This is something that's really, really hitting a lot of guys and gals close at home. And I think we need to start having these hard conversations and really bring awareness to this stuff, so we can, I don't know about you, but the things that I've experienced in the VA and in the institutions that are starting to treat this stuff and really dig into it, when I first started going at it, it was pretty apparent and clear to me that I was kind of a little bit of a guinea pig. They really hadn't, they hadn't really found success in a lot of things that they were doing. So they were kind of throwing the kitchen sink at it, just doing everything to see if they could get results from it. And if you're any type of person that can recognize that, it's kind of a creepy feeling when you see that.
It definitely is. But, I was talking to a buddy of mine on another podcast, and I kind of equate the VA and all of the medical, it's like both physical and mental medical that we do while we're active duty. It's like the cut man in the corner of a fight. So, their only job is to patch you up just enough to throw you back in to get punched in the face some more. It's like, we'll put on some click clot, we'll try to stop the bleeding, we'll put some ice on you, and then get back out there for the next round. But then after the fight's over, you go out to, let's say you didn't even go to a fight doctor, you went to a general practitioner, and they look at you like, holy shit, what did you do to yourself? And you're like, what? I'm a fighter. This is totally normal. And not just normal, but we want it. We're ready to go back for the next fight. But then they look at you like, how could you do this to yourself? How do you even function? And that's kind of what it's like when you transition out. And now suddenly there are people who are interested in fixing you and actually making you feel better. And it's just like this foreign world. Like, what? You're not just going to give me Motrin and tell me to change my socks and hydrate?
I love that.
This is insane. This is what real people do. But it helps people kind of understand what it was like, because there's this idea that being in the military, we have the great health care, we're all in great physical and mental conditioning, and we know the truth. It's stick a band-aid on it and get back out there. If you can't fix it with duct tape, you probably don't need it. So for me, and actually I'm dual military, my husband and I both retired at the exact same time. We've been pleasantly surprised by the VA. I really expected them to just be like, we'll get you in sometime in the next year. But you can tell something's changed. They're trying, they're really, really trying and pushing to make sure that what resources are out there and that you get seen. And that's been really refreshing, actually.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
we've kind of heard that from a few different people. Some people are really it's been a crappy experience. And some people, are like, it's great. And, I'm happy to see that because that's kind of showing us that they're really starting to, create a change.
Oh yeah.
But if you don't mind, Emma, could we I'd love for my listeners to know about your background. And if you could we kind of start at the beginning and make our way through it a little bit?
Oh, we could go full dramatic.
then
Like I was born, I grew up. Yeah. Like
then remind me, I have a question for you too. When after you go through this, I have a question for you. So.
I think we
okay.
both do, Doc. Don't worry, we'll get there.
Yeah. So I was non-traditional. I didn't come from a military family. I had no aspirations of being in the military at all. It wasn't even on my radar, really. And then September 11th happened. And like a lot of people, my whole world shifted. Everything changed. And I never had any idea how patriotic I was until that moment and how highly pissed off I was. So I ended up joining the Navy, and I chose the Navy because, well, I grew up in Ohio. There's no ocean, and the fascination with water was a thing. And I had a childhood friend who had done the Navy for about 5 seconds. And so I figured if she could do it, I could do it. And so I decided, I'm going to put in my notice. I went into the Navy recruiter's office and I said, hey, I want to travel. I want to learn foreign languages. I want to jump out of airplanes if you let me. And they looked at me real weird and said, this is the Navy, right? Yeah. It's like, that's how clueless I was.
How old were you?
I was 22, actually.
Okay.
So I signed the paperwork to join the Navy on my 22nd birthday. They actually sang me happy birthday at MEPS. So it just kind of gives you an idea. I had no idea what I was getting into. When it came time to pick my job, I was picking my rate. They had me look at a list. Like they just had like a generic list of descriptions of what the different jobs were. And I went through and I found intelligence specialist. And I was like, oh, this sounds cool. And I looked at the recruiter. I was like, well, what's this? And he goes, I don't know. Okay. All right. So let's do that one. So fast forward, I go through, get to the first night at band camp, boot camp. And I remember I am that level of nerd too, so we can talk about that if you want. But
love it.
I remember sitting on my rack after lights out that very first night and just kind of had my arms around my knees. God, what did I just do? And it was that culture shock of like, this is real.
Everyone talks about that moment, like right at boot camp, where it just all hits. We got to figure out like a term for it because it hits everybody hard and everyone goes through it.
Shock of capture.
There you go.
There you go. But overall, boot camp was fairly easy for me. I was a little older, so I think I handled it a little bit well.
Did you guys both go to is it the similar boot camp or where's boot camp? Where's boot camp for you?
Great Lakes.
Great Lakes. Yep. So
Gotcha.
I was in Great Lakes at the end of 2001. Let me tell you, Great Lakes in winter, no, don't do it.
No.
Nope.
No. I was like, I grew up in Ohio. I thought I knew what cold was. I was so wrong.
Fuck no.
Yeah, exactly. And then, but then I went off to Virginia Beach, which I spent a great portion of my career as I ended up, and went through school. I ended up doing really well and got to pick orders to my very first command, which you probably saw in my bio is it's a squadron that doesn't even exist anymore. But Special Projects Patrol Squadron 1 in Maine. Yeah. I thought I was cold in Great Lakes. Hello, Maine.
Yeah, right.
That was quite possibly the coolest first tour.
That's what I was going to ask you. What is Special Projects? What does that mean?
So it was surveillance. So it was surveillance, and it was surveillance done in a unique way with a unique platform. And I as an intel guy, I mean, it doesn't get cooler than that. It's like I got exposed to so many different kinds of intelligence all at once. We did very short detachments. So we had 4 crews that we constantly rotated. So I had to get very, very savvy, very, very quick on not just all their safety of flight things, but on how to present, how to put together a package for them to be able to collect intelligence. And like 8 weeks or so, I was out the door. I would go out for 4 to 6 weeks. I would come home for a little bit, and then I would do it again. And there were deployments where I was their only intel person. So I was, port and starboard. So I was sleeping maybe 2-3 hours a day. I would take naps in between crews. I was barely eating. Like some of the maintainers would be like, have you eaten today? What's today? Maybe. But you get into that rhythm, and you get so into it. It's like the adrenaline rush. It gets addicting, and you just keep right on going, especially when you get to see what you do. And I was very fortunate that my crew would let me fly with them. So I would go and learn firsthand, like, okay, here's the products I gave them. Do they work? Do I need to package it differently? What am I doing that could be better? And, there's nothing quite like sitting in an observer seat for 12 hours, because we used to try to challenge each other, like who can sit in this cold ass window the longest to watch to make sure that nobody's shooting, a missile at us. You're watching the ground for flashes. Like, last thing you want in an airplane to see smoke in the air. So we used to keep each other awake and taunt each other over the ICS. But, I got an appreciation for the people who were doing the job very, very quickly when they tossed my ass in the seat and made me part of the crew.
That's very unique. Not a lot of times does the intel get to see the firsthand of what they're surveilling or what they're putting together in the field.
Yep. So, and it made a huge difference.
Sure.
But then after that, I went to school to instruct this time. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to be the first woman to go through the first class that ever had Navy in it of the Marines MAGTF CI HUMINT course.
Impressive.
So it was a huge deal, and I had no idea at the time. So literally it came out in an email. Here's an email saying HUMINT anyone, human intelligence. I was intel. I knew what it was. So I responded, say, yeah, I'm interested in this. Zero clue that it was anything other than analytical support. I thought it was like, hey, you're going to go and learn how to do analysis of human intelligence and how to support human intelligence. So I go and I show up for work, and they're like, hey, you got into that class. It started today. Oh, crap. Well, all right, I'm already late. Go, and I walk into a whole room full of Marines. And I go, oh, okay.
Perfect.
And they sit me in the back, and they said, hey, welcome to the class. Go ahead and sit down. We'll get you caught up on what you missed. So, I sit down and I start taking notes, and, they look at me and they go, hey, we know this is probably all really new for you. So if there's anything you don't understand, let us know. We'll break it down Barney style for you. Like, okay. So I raise my hand. I go, what's Barney style? So I was starting at -0.
Yep.
And I said, all right, I'm taking notes. And we're about 10 minutes in, and I have that, oh shit, they're not asking me to do analysis. They're asking me to do this. I'm supposed to be the interrogator. I'm supposed to be the source operator. So yeah, I start taking notes even faster. Like, this just got real quick. I was like, I went from being the analyst, the guy who sits in the office and puts all the paperwork together, to being, no, you're going to be the person in the room.
Gotcha.
So,
boots on the ground.
Yeah, it got real quick. And there were still a lot of unknowns. And the only reason I was allowed in is because, Marines had not opened that up to women, because that MOS goes on the front lines.
Yeah.
There were no women on the front lines in 2006. And so, but the Navy did not have that rule. So it was this wonderful little loophole. So that's how I got to go in. The intent was for us to go and get operational experience and then come back and be instructors again. So after I graduated, I went to Naval Special Warfare, and that's where I cut my teeth doing the job. I got very fortunate.
Real quick, you have a lot of firsts.
I do.
you're also a part of a very young Navy, in a time where there's a lot of challenges for females. Being in these positions, and now, are we the first? I mean, this is the first program. Am I wrong? Are you also the first female in this program?
I was the first female. I was the first female graduate from that course, and was the first female with my skill set to work for Naval Special Warfare. So there had been contractors and there had been other women who had done some like DIA or some sort of training that allowed them to have a similar skill set, but we didn't have the same quals. And most times they were either reservists or like a contractor. So there I come in strutting in as, you know, active duty with all the qualifications. So I wasn't just an interrogator. I wasn't just a source operator. I couldn't, or doing debriefing. I had it all. So it's an incredible tool set to have, you know, when one person. So I was really looking forward to getting my hands dirty and getting in there and showing everybody what I could do. And because I was the first, everyone kind of went, "What do we do with you?"
Sure. Yeah. Give you that sideways look.
Yeah, like, yeah, you can do what? So I ended up volunteering to fill a gap at the end of a deployment that was already going on. And I fly into, you know, Iraq, because that's where all the fun was happening at the time. And
this is 08, 09?
No, this is 2006. This is Iraq in 2006.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I go and, you know, I fly into Al Taqaddum, you know, and you know, it's weird. It's under the cover of darkness. I can't really see anything, but this is feeling a little gritty, a little real. And then next thing I know, they're like, "Okay, your ride's here." And I'm like, "All right." And I go, like, "That's a helicopter. That's not just any helicopter. That's a 60. There are guns on the side of that helicopter." Oh, okay. So I drag all my kit out there and jump on, and, you know, the door gunners are out there and we're all red lights, and then we take off from TQ to Fallujah. And that was my first experience in Iraq. It's like, it's real. I mean, I'm
no
sitting
bullshit.
in a movie.
There.
I'm in the video game. This is real. Okay.
Where's your mindset at right there?
My mindset's in that, like,
are you freaking out? You excited?
Are you a little bit of both? Up is what I was thinking. It was like, nobody is going to believe this. This is real.
Yeah, you're going.
Yeah, exactly. The pucker factor might have been a little there, but
yeah, you couldn't fit a gnat up that motherfucker at that moment.
Yeah,
like, what?
In all fairness, I have a little bit of a let's call it an adventurous streak. So, like, the adrenaline junkie in me was really digging it, but, you know, I'm not an idiot. I knew how very real it was, and you know, I had gone out so last minute, I didn't have any gear that was mine. It was all borrowed. So I had like some old, they pulled out of a closet M16, and I had body armor that was 2 sizes too big for me, and it was still traditional woodland pattern, and everybody else is wearing, you know, desert camis.
So you're looking like a little misfit.
Not going to step out at all. I was like, you know, none of my Kevlar fits, but, you know, I didn't know the difference at the time. I was like, they told me to take it. I take it. I got in and I left. And when I hit the ground, I was ready to go. It's like, okay, I'm here, let's go. You know, they met me with a Hilux out in the truck. You know, they threw all my gear in the back, and we went to our little compound on Camp Fallujah. And I'm like, okay, what now? I'm like, well, I guess we got to figure out what to do with you. So there's no female accommodations with my task unit. So they had set up like a plywood partition inside one of the tents that all the guys were in, and they put like a little hook and loop closure on it, and that was my room. So, you know, I was crashing with the guys in the tent like everybody else, and, you know, at first they put me to work doing, you know, briefs and all the normal intel guy stuff, and then I realized, wait a minute, those guys over there, they're running sources. Those guys over there are doing interrogation. Yeah, Dr. Ever took I need a cat at this point. Like, yes, where do I strike first? So eventually I got them to give me an opportunity. And, you know, it was actually the interrogators who let me have my first opportunity. And
I like it.
I got into the booth and I started working my skill set. And, you know, truthfully, still to this day, I think the first detainee I ever interrogated was truly innocent, but I was so amped to go in and show what I could do.
Let me slow you down. This is something that I truly love. I actually got to do a little bit of this, and I know that you have to really work with interpreters at that point. Can you talk about, so both I and Doc, myself and Doc, have a lot of experience in working with seasoned interpreters, guys that have to tell you that correct information, and the way that they interpret it to you is just pivotal. They need to tell you the things, the little things, the details that matter. Otherwise, you're gonna jack your shit all up and you're gonna look like a clown in front of these people. So tell me about your experience with that.
I've had both amazing and are you effing kidding me?
Yeah,
Terps or linguists, depending on what their
I
preference
apologize.
is.
That's
at that time.
never like a diss or a
Oh no,
like that's just something that we always would call them, and they
nope.
actually loved it.
It's like, so I was very, very fortunate, and I didn't realize how fortunate I was through my first couple of deployments, in that we had amazing interpreters. A couple of guys that, you know, I would still, you know, I would take a bullet for today, because I mean, we had that relationship, we had that level of trust. They truly understood what was going on, but because I had that, it made me appreciate them more when I didn't have it. Because then I've also have the flip side of that, where they don't seem to understand what the point is. They don't understand what you want them to do, and then
Maybe a
some of
little
them
in
are
over their
just,
heads. Yeah.
or some of them are just actively working against you, which
Or
that's
that.
fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing better than the terp who's like, well, you need me and I don't need you, and so I'm gonna mess up your world. Like that. Try working with that guy.
Yeah.
I had a throwdown with a terp who decided that he wanted to show me my place because I was a woman and I needed a man to tell me what I was supposed to do.
Really?
He did not like my response.
Yeah, I bet.
I have a feeling he didn't.
He did not.
I
He went
barely
crying
know
to our
you,
troop
but I have
commander.
a feeling.
He went crying to the troop commander, crying literally, and, you know, complained that I was being mean to them. I'm like,
Wow.
Dude had like good 60 pounds on me, and he was, I don't know, 6'3", 6'4". It's like, he's massive, but he was such a, I'm not sure what words you can and cannot say on
Oh,
this.
you could say anything you want. Huh?
Yeah, go for
No
it.
holds barred here.
He like, just like,
I hear you.
yeah, but it ended up working out in my favor, because yeah, he burned rapport with our entire troop at that point, and he ended up trying to suck up for the rest of our deployment. But at the same time, I needed him to not be a piece of shit, so that way we could get our work done. But going back to, you know, my first experiences, you know, the guys I was working with were locked on. They knew they would say exactly what I said, exactly how I said it. They knew to tell me exactly what came out of, you know, the detainee's mouth. There was no embellishment, and, you know, I could actually even sit down and tell them, hey, this is what I'm going to do, here's my plan. We would work through our approaches, so that way they could even anticipate what direction I was going to go. And, you know, having that kind of symbiotic relationship just made all the difference in the world.
Did you get to pick up on the language at all?
I did, but it was bits and pieces. So, you know, I can still, like, somebody will say something to me and I'll automatically respond without even thinking about it.
Your
like,
hey,
just
hellos,
yeah,
what's up?
But then as soon as I try to think about it, I'm like, oh, what's that? How was I supposed to do that?
I get you.
But I shit you not, I knew when I was getting the simple man speech, is what I called it. You know, it was like something along the lines of, like, I get up, I go to work, I come home, I don't know any bad people. And it was like, it was almost verbatim every single time. You know, I was like, do they teach you this in terrorist school? It's like, you know, this is how you're supposed to respond to, you know, being detained. Because it, again, verbatim, it was like I had the same rhythm to it and everything. And I would just look at my terp and go, he's giving me the simple man speech again. Like, yep. But I was able to start kind of earning my stripes there. You know, once I started getting that credibility, then the guys who were running sources started looking at me like, well, what could she do for us? Because, you know, as we all know, the American military has a certain look. So when you're going to run sources, you go to run into a source meet, you expect a certain kind of look. So
could you unpack that a little bit for sources? Can you tell me about that?
Yeah.
Like what that is?
So anybody who has been recruited to provide information or to provide assistance for U.S. intelligence. So straight up, this is espionage. And I tell you how much fun I used to have when they would do my security clearance reviews and they would ask me that question of, have you ever committed espionage? Yes.
Well,
You want to see the looks on
Good
some
for
people's
you.
faces. And eventually they got smart and did the preemptive outside the course of your normal duties, which kind of took away all my fun. But I had quite a few of them like, well, you guys pay me to do
yeah, exactly.
espionage, so I'm confused by your tactics.
Yeah.
Eventually, the source handlers, so the guys who had already recruited assets to give us information that we were then turning around into intelligence reports and using to build targets, they realized what I brought to the table. And because I looked different than they did, it opened doors.
Not only that, you probably threw them off their game a little bit. I mean,
ding, 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 ding.
Yeah.
you know how they are with females. They're
Oh,
not,
yeah.
they're used to being so high over them and controlling them. All of a sudden they have an alpha female in front of them.
It always, I felt like it was more of an advantage. So everyone always asked the question, is like it had to be a detriment because especially in that society and with certain mentalities or ideology, you're viewed as being beneath them.
Yep.
That works when you're trying to get somebody to talk. It's like, it doesn't, you hate my guts. Go ahead, hate me. Think I am absolutely horrible. As a matter of fact, tell me all about it. Because the more you're running your mouth, the more data points you're giving me. So I can get a baseline for you as a person. I understand what your buttons are. I understand how you answer questions. I understand how you respond to things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those are all things I can use. And then same thing, nobody was really talking to the women because women would shut up when a man was around. But you put me in a room with a bunch of women. Oh, dear God, please give me an interpreter. I have no idea what they're all yelling at me. it's like I didn't even have to ask questions sometimes. It was just, the door shut and they're like, yes, let's talk. I'm like, I'm just gonna hit record. Like what? I'm not even sure what I'm getting into.
Yeah.
But we realized there was advantages to it. And so those early days were great. It was, a lot of lessons learned, a lot of applying things I learned in school, learning new techniques that worked for me. And then I got back and then I volunteered to go out again. So, a brand new command stood up around me. It was one of those things like, hey, we're going to commission this new command. All of these billets, they're now ours. Like, hey, great. All right. So I'm a plank owner. What do we do now? Like, go back on deployment. Great. So, I went out again, right back to Fallujah. But this time I got to do a workup cycle with one of the SEAL teams. So it wasn't just me getting thrown in at the last minute. I had to actually work with these guys and earn their trust right from the get-go. And I was the first woman they'd ever had attached to their troop.
What was that like?
Overall, fantastic. It started off in like, you can't get any better. So
I'm just going to say that these are tier 1 operators.
Oh, they're special. So I'll throw this out there preemptively. It's like, I do love SEALs. I really do. But I kind of look at them in the way most people probably do siblings. It's like, I think they're all idiots. I will pick on them like crazy. But if anybody else does it, I get very defensive.
Of course, I hear you.
But so if anybody's going to talk trash about them, it's going to be me. But they really are some of them are some of the best people I've ever known and still are. But my first senior enlisted called me and 2 other techs, because that's what we were. We're not golden chicken wearers, so techs and operators. Called us into his room and said, hey, I know you guys are all new to the troop. I just want to introduce myself. And he was very upfront about his expectations for us. But then he looks at me and he goes, I'm not going to bullshit you. I've never had a woman under my command. You're my first. And I don't give a shit. You do your job. You pull your weight. You're part of my team. If anybody gives you hell, let me know and I will kill them.
We kept it real with you.
He was very real. And then he reached in, he pulled a 6-pack out of a bag, sat it down, and we all cracked a beer. It's like,
nice.
This might be the greatest person I've ever met in my life. And I still maintain comms with that guy because he's a phenomenal human being. But that was how things were set up for me. And I had a few team guys who I quite literally got into fights with as we went through all of this. But for the most part, it really was them testing me. It was what my experiences are a little bit different than some other women, and I know, and I do think personality has a lot to do with it.
I was just going to say that, yeah, of course.
But for me, If they poked, I poked back. If they tested me, I would crush them. So it was me earning my place in the circle of trust. And once I got inside that circle of trust, I was there. They would, take my word. They would do what I needed. I was part of the team. It wasn't me earning my place anymore.
Gotcha.
But it does take some time because you don't have that same background as all the rest of them do.
But when you do, you see how things can work as just a well-oiled machine. And it really works in your favor to just, go through that gauntlet of, take the poke, give it back, show that you're not, backing down, and, take it as it comes. So,
oh yeah. Well,
yeah, and it
I was
takes that
young.
one time too, that one time, like with the captured individual or the whatever, and you show you're like, all right, I got him, and they're like, oh shit, all right, she's good to go, we're good to go.
And I was young. I didn't have all the aches and pains that I do now. I was way into mixed martial arts, so and I had maybe a slight temper problem, so it worked out great. So anytime somebody wanted to go, I was ready to go. So it ended up being the perfect dynamic for me. And yeah, I've rolled with quite a few of those guys.
Nice. So what was the year this time? Are you
So that was
08,
2007 into 2008. So
you went right back. Okay.
Well, then after that deployment, I came back and I did a real short turn. I had about 4.5, 5 months to work up again, and I went out again at 2008 and into 2009. But this time I was in Haditha. That was not such a good deployment, not such a good team. And oh man, you want to talk about fights with team guys? Had quite a few on that one. But I also had some of my biggest victories. So, I've told this story before, so I'm not going to bore everybody, but I had
go ahead.
Oh, okay. I had my OIC for my troop, who was an incredible asshat. Kind of had it out for me from workups. I inadvertently, it's not my intention, showed him up when we were doing some of our evaluations to certify to deploy. I did my job. He did not do his, and he did not appreciate the feedback that I did something he couldn't do, and he took that out on me. It's like he hated my guts forever after that. So it wasn't exactly a good place for me for that deployment. That, and he had his little bitch boy who was, he was E5, he was BFFs with this damn O3. But I mean, he let him run roughshod over everybody just because it was complete breakdown in chain of command, and I wasn't good with that. So anytime little bitch boy ran his mouth, I would run mine right back, and then I would piss off the OIC even more. So it became this wonderful OODA loop of
Gotcha.
battles.
Awesome.
He threatened to take me to mass a few times, and I said, "Go ahead, I dare you."
See how that goes for you.
It's like, please do it. It's like, I will request court martial. Let's do this. You want to play this game? I'm your Huckleberry. Let's go. Yeah, obviously still a little upset about these guys, but
Of course.
it ended up serving me better because I was working sources. I had earned my place with the guys out there, and we were a very good team who were all running sources together. And I had one of my sources deliver me one of the top 10 for Al Anbar. And
wow.
I brought it to said OIC, said, I have this. I have a human trigger. This is like the gold standard. Like, this is I am bringing you, the jackpot.
Yeah.
Let's roll. Let's do this. I got it. Let's go. And he looked at me and said, yeah, you know what? That's a little far for us. Why don't you see if somebody else will pick it up? Damn. Okay. All right. So I picked up a phone and I called our task force liaison, and he was like, all right, let me see what I can do. And next thing I know, I'm talking to another intel guy who was with our tier 1 component. And he said, tell me what you got. So I laid it all out for him. He said, all right, let me see what what we can do and what we can bounce off with what we know, and we'll get back to you. Okay. So ended up going to bed, and then about 2 hours later I hear my phone ringing. Like, I'm sleeping in the same little shack as where I'm working. Run over, pick it up, and they're like, hey, we got him. And it's like not just him, but they got their number one on their list, because they were traveling together, as it turned
From
out.
your source?
From my source. So we got a twofer. Well, they got a twofer.
Yeah,
so of course, what did I do? I did a victory dance. I was like, fuck yeah, this is the greatest thing ever. And I go tell the LIC, I was like, hey, they got him and they got somebody else. And he just kind of looked at me and he goes, well, why didn't you tell me that was a possibility? Like,
oh, you just want to
strangle him. And I just like
Yes.
smile and I say, man, best you wish you would have rolled out now. Deuces, yo. I walked out. I'm riding a high, but needless to say, he didn't treat me so good after that.
This is still your second deployment, correct?
This is my third time in country. So my first time out, it was about 8 weeks. So I'm not, and yes, it was a deployment,
Gotcha.
but this is my second full deployment. So
Iraq still.
Third time
Okay.
in Iraq, second full deployment. So this is a full, it was actually about 7 months. But because of all the good work we ended up doing out there, is I got selected for Intelligence Specialist of the Year. I ended up making chief. It was phenomenal.
That was 09.
Yep.
09,
Yep.
You made chief. Okay.
Yep.
So are you getting to the point where you have people under you? Or are you still operating as like
yes, yes and no. So because we were going out in small groups, like where I was working at the time, we hadn't really come up with functional teams yet, is what we eventually called them. There's something different now, but at the time we were basically piecemealing together, like, okay, we need this kind of intel support package to go with this SEAL team. We need this kind of intel support package to go to this SEAL team. Eventually it became like, okay, here is a cross-functional team that has everything intel that we think a SEAL team needs. And then these guys are going to all train together and then link up and hook up with the SEAL team. And they're going to stay on that kind of rotation. We were just getting into that. When I got back from my Haditha deployment, a lot of the guys I'd already worked with, we were all now part of this cross-functional troop, and we gelled like you would not believe. It was the greatest small group I've ever worked with. I've had some pretty great ones, but this one was top-notch. Still maintain close comms with all of them.
That's awesome.
But we ended up going out again. I went back to Iraq in 2010, and this time I was in Baghdad. So, not in Al Anbar anymore, which is
what's Iraq like in 2010? Because we were over in Afghanistan. That's where a lot of heavy fighting was going on.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of unaware of what the climate was in Iraq at that time.
Well, in 2010, things were shifting. So I was there at the end of Iraqi freedom and into the shift of New Dawn. So It was a very unique environment. So we were going away from having us be on the kinetic leads. We were putting Iraqi faces on everything. And that was my most challenging and unique deployment, because they put me right in the middle of an Iraqi command in Baghdad. So it was me and a few other very select individuals.
This is Iraqi police?
There was Iraqi police, Iraqi army, and their local government. So there was the chief of staff there had, like, no shit, a red phone on his desk where he'd pick up and call the prime minister, or the prime minister would call him.
Wow.
So it was essentially their operation cell for all like Iraqi army and Iraqi police operations that were happening throughout the theater.
So that's exactly what we were doing in 2010. We were embedded with Afghan National Army and Afghan Highway Patrol. We were training them to fight the Taliban, trying to stand up, similar things.
Nothing quite like doing FID, man. It was like it's always fun watching them do jumping jacks, but it's got to be done.
Definitely an unsettling feeling, though, being embedded with the enemy, though, or not the enemy, but just you know what I mean.
Oh no, I do. Because keep in mind, these are all Iraqis. These are high-ranking Iraqis. So what do you think the probability is that one of them is directly connected to somebody? So my portion of training these guys was I was teaching them how to build target packages. So there I am, the intel guy, training all these Iraqi intelligence officers, and I'm thinking, okay, how many of you guys are working for Kataib Hezbollah? That was a real daily thing for me. I was like having to walk that line of, yes, I'm trying to be a good partner. Yes, I'm doing the job that I've been tasked to do, but I had the counterintelligence side of me, which is why they stuck me there, trying to figure out which one of these guys wasn't who they said they were. So that was a very interesting chess match throughout the entire time I was there, and then we were doing, because eventually we had to start getting approval to do operations. So yes, we would like the Iraqi army to go to this district. Oh shit, that district's a Shia district. No, you can't go there without approval. So I have to go to the chief of staff, who's Shia, and tried to convince him that this is a good move and that's something he needed to do. Once again, it's where we discovered that me being female,
I was just going to ask that.
Was a good thing, because day one I show up and my OIC looks at me, come with me. Okay. I have no idea where we're going. We go into the chief's of staff's room and he just lights up. He's smiling. So I smile back. I'm pleasant. I shake his hand. And, then next thing I know, my OIC is sliding this piece of paper up to him. It's like, hey, could you give us approval for this operation? This guy's just smiling at me. Sure. And he signs it away. And I come to find out, like, oh, he just approved an op in Slaughter City. This is awesome. After that, my OIC was like, yep, boobs win wars. Like,
yeah, it's very true.
So,
very true.
Yep. We may have used that to our advantage a few times. Couldn't do it too often because I got pretty savvy to it pretty quick. But it was something, because I didn't look like everybody else in there who, we weren't wearing uniforms. I didn't have a buzz cut. I just looked different.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
It's like nobody looks at me and goes, that's the spy. Like nobody thinks I'm doing CI. Nobody thinks that, I'm running sources, which I was. It worked out great.
Someone like early in your career recognized that, I think, and really used that for your advantage. Think about it. You look at that, and especially one of them, they don't think that someone like you is in a high position or in intel position. So you butter them up with a smile and a cheer, and all of a sudden they're telling you everything you need to know. That's impressive.
I was lucky. I was a little older coming in, so I had a little bit more life experience, and the training I went through really was phenomenal. And I think before I joined, I really had aspirations of being an actor. I know, silly, but I was a kid. That's what I wanted to do. But it worked. It's like I ended up being able to kind of utilize those skills real world. It's like, so it's hey, I'm doing, whose line is it anyway?
I mean, exactly. What's an intel operator? What's their job? They have to act like one of them. You know what I mean? Like,
I gotta make people who I would rather shoot in the face believe I am their best friend, and that's what I did, and it ended up working out well. The guy in Haditha who gave me the information that changed everything, I hated him with a passion. Absolute hate. I had to sit and listen to him tell me how he was passionately in love with a 14-year-old girl and was just heartbroken because her daddy would not approve the marriage. And I had to commiserate with him and tell him, how heartbreaking that was. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking about, putting his skull through the wall. And
play the game. I hear you.
It's just the way it was.
Yeah, something that unfortunately we had the firsthand view of was so over in Afghanistan, especially the Helmand province area that we were in, Chai boys, Bachi boys, whatever you want to call them, and walking in on that after not knowing about it or not thinking you're going to walk in on that is a sight to see, let me tell you. Extremely hard not to dump a whole clip in one.
I understand. It's like I was in Afghanistan for about 8 weeks in 2004, and that unfortunately was my only experiences in Afghanistan, but it left a massive impression.
I'm sure. So. Yeah. How would you compare Afghanistan to Iraq?
So keep in mind, it's like my experiences are a little unique, but I've also done a lot of research just by nature of the beast. And I think it's a mistake to try to say Afghanistan and Iraq are in any way, shape, or form the same.
Oh,
The
absolutely.
people are
Absolutely.
radically different. The history is
Absolutely.
radically different. Just
Yes, ma'am.
even the attitude of the enemy on the ground is radically different. And it's going to sound weird, but I have a lot of respect for Afghanis. Like
No,
massive
it does not
amounts.
sound weird. It does not sound weird.
It's
Mm-mm.
like the
No, it does not.
It's funny because we say that sometimes, but the normal civilian
Yeah.
will hear that and they're like, "What? What are you
Yeah.
talking about?" But that just shows that's an ignorance that a lot of people have, and I'm not like saying that to insult somebody, but
Yeah.
you really, as you said, you got to do your research. You got to have your boots on ground in a lot of situations. You got to feel out these people and see what they've been going through to understand their struggle. And when you do, and you realize what's going on over there, it's you got to be a nitwit not to feel for them, honestly, because
Yeah. And
Agreed.
you know, like us being over there, like I can only speak for like me and Nick. We won a lot more fights with words than we did gunfire. Because, you know, we'd be like, okay, hey, calm down. What do you guys need? You know, like how can we help you? And then they'd turn us on to, you know, this guy over here, he's making IEDs. And we're like, oh, okay, cool. So you
Yep.
guys aren't going to do that anymore? And they're like, no, we're not going to do that anymore. Thanks for the food.
it's
Right
really
on.
it's really crazy to see because something that we realized right away when we got to the AO that we would be working in, it was a heavy poppy area. And as you know, Taliban has a foothold on the poppy market in Afghanistan. And when we realized the control the Taliban had on of the community out there was just insane. Like these people ruled their area with an iron fist. And they could literally go into the area, go up to any house, like this is our house now. We're operating out of it. And the civilian knew that if they disagreed at all, their women would be raped and killed, their farm would be burnt down, everyone would be beheaded. So ultimately, the Taliban literally runs a shadow government over every part of the Helmand province.
Mhm.
Excuse me.
Yep.
And to see that boots on ground is just, especially at a young age, because unfortunately, I wasn't aware. If I could recommend anything to a young hitter coming up right now, I would definitely recommend instead of going out drinking and partying. Unfortunately, that's something I did heavily, but if I can recommend anything, do your research, learn about the AO that you're going in, read, see what you're getting into, because you can be a lethal warrior if you can just understand what you're about to jump into. Because if you go in with the typical, these guys are just towel heads and kill everybody, it's going to be to your detriment because
Yeah.
that's not what it is over there. It's really
Yeah.
not. And sorry, I'm getting on a
No,
on a
no,
pedestal.
you're absolutely right. It's like, there's a reason Afghanistan's been like the death of empires. It was like you don't mess around with the Afghanis, and it is heartbreaking to see what the Taliban does, but at the same time, there's a strength and resilience in those people that
For sure.
it's not done. We don't like what we're seeing, but it's not done.
So, if you don't mind me asking, kind of bring it into current times, how do you feel about the pullout of Afghanistan? Because you work with interpreters, that's something that really hit us at home because we work with a lot of guys over there, and for us to just leave, we're literally running these guys up the flagpole. The Taliban knows that they work with us, for us to just leave a lot of those guys over there is like people aren't exactly going to jump in line to work with us in the next one after that. It's just a very, very bad leadership call to do that.
There were failures everywhere on that one, and I mean, unfortunately, there's no way for anybody to say that went well. And
Yeah.
while I totally understand, we couldn't stay in Afghanistan forever. We had to pull out eventually. We had to leave, and we had to hope, which I get it, hope's not a course of action, but we had to hope that something would stick. But anybody who's been in the military more than 2 seconds could have seen that was not it was not going to work the way they were rolling it out. It would just they fumbled the actual event. It's like, now, well, I don't disagree with the pullout. I do disagree with how it happened, if that makes sense.
Of course, absolutely.
Absolutely. I would agree with you 100%, man.
It breaks my heart, and it still does.
If I were to look at it from like an outside aspect, like just with the glass half full and kind of just, you know, looking at it from an outside point of view, I really would from the get-go not try to work or stand up the ANA, Afghan police, highway patrol, or even the Iraqi police or anything like that, because from the jump they were all infiltrated. You know, half of them were connected, were Taliban, were to some degree. I would have contacted the Mujahideen to some degree. I don't know what your intel is on the Mujahideen, but it's a very, very interesting and intricate part of the Afghan history. And I understand that the Taliban also came with Mujahideen. But at a point,
Which is
there
why
was
they
a
killed
split.
their leadership.
Yeah, exactly. There was a split in the leadership in the Mujahideen. One went one way and one went the other. And we had a lot of old Muj guys, a lot of old like, in our Afghan forces, and those guys were the most lethal and most loyal guys. They hated the Taliban, and they would kill them on sight. Those are the people we needed to put in positions to discredit the Taliban and fight the Taliban. Unfortunately, we didn't. But that's neither here nor there. I get kind of passionate about this stuff.
No,
It's
it's like,
something
well,
go ahead.
no, as the intel guy, I can tell you that's the problem we really had. Again, granted, this is 2020 hindsight, but you know, we did the same thing in Iraq that we did in Afghanistan. We didn't learn from our mistakes. You go in and you decide who the villains are, and you arbitrarily knock everybody out and say, now everybody's going to do it our way or else. If you don't know the history, you don't know the culture, you don't know the intricacies, you know, it would be so much more effective if we had utilized the resources and the divides that were already in place. Who is the natural enemy of the Taliban? Work with them, don't tear it down. It would have been the same thing when we went into Iraq. You know, like everyone's like, oh, they're Ba'ath Party, they must be loyal to Saddam. Well, it's the same thing. Those guys, you're loyal or you get killed. Those guys hated him, but we got rid of everybody who was professionalized military. All their expertise, all their leadership was gone because we just arbitrarily said, no, you must all be bad and we're going to do things our way. And then we wondered why we had such a hard time establishing anything that people would buy into or understand, why we had so many schisms. We can't just go in as Team America and say, hey, we're here to save the day.
Yeah,
it's like,
exactly. These are not
doesn't work that way.
Well, so on me and Nick's deployment, so that was my second deployment to Afghanistan. My first one was in Marja. And so I learned a lot of hard life lessons in Marja. That's for damn sure. But over there, and me and Nick, we brought this up before and we talk about it all the time. Just building a relationship with the people in the community, you know, like, because they're the ones that are going to give you that, hey, you boys might want to get out of here.
Oh, yeah.
Or, you know, hey, it's over there. Or, you know, and instead of just like, fuck them all, you know, like that type of thing. Because I know that was a lot. That was a lot of what a lot of our guys and gals did. But yeah.
People look at it like, well, we're on deployment. Well, yeah, you're on deployment, but they live here. This is their life.
Yeah.
And so, you know, who's got more at stake?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, and I mean, you know, how do you catch more flies, you know?
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Honey or vinegar.
Yep.
It's a fact.
Oh, I'm sorry. I've taken up so much of your time. I don't even know if this is the direction you wanted me to go.
No. So we don't. So
Do
something
not
about
be
our
sorry.
podcast is we don't really plan it. Honestly, like I always. Oh, I now I take that back. I do my research and I generate a bunch of questions, but I'll throw one out there. I'll feel you out a little bit, and I'll let you go a little bit. And honestly, if a podcast is worth a damn, it's gonna be a conversation that happens, a fluid conversation between two people, a listen, a give and a take, and honestly, I feel like that's the best. That's what I look for in a podcast when I watch it. Just a good conversation between people. I really just wanted to feel you out, and I like you have a very unique career. honestly. Like,
You could say
as
that
I say
again.
it, like, I mean, you were in a young Navy. You were in a very young Navy. That wasn't easy for women to be
Ooh,
successful. But you
well,
have a very, very alpha attitude, and that is definitely how you got to be very successful, because you can't have, you can't be really breakable as a person in the military. You gotta have thick skin. You gotta let things not bother you, and you gotta be strong minded. You gotta be
stubborn
confident in
is
yourself.
what I usually
Absolutely,
go.
yeah.
Yeah.
Stubborn works. Stubborn works.
That's that.
Yeah. No,
So
you're right. I was like, I was, and one thing I'm pretty proud of is, like I never really succumbed to the military mentality. I
yeah,
constantly bucked the status quo. My most hated phrase was, "Well, this is the way we've always done it." That immediately made me want to tear everything apart. And I think
Yeah.
that served me well because, going through MAGTAF, getting to do all the things I did, like all my successes were first. And then it just kept going. I led the first team to, you know, work with NCIS to do real world CI. I was like,
saw that. That's huge.
just the sheer fact that I graduated, we started a brand new NEC, like the MOS didn't exist when I started. It was
Mhm.
created after I graduated. It was like that whole community stood up with me and two other people. So, by the time I retired, I had been in the community longer than anybody else had. And I got to see it grow. I saw all the
That's
firsts.
awesome.
It was, that's kind of something that's once in a lifetime, but it was
Yeah, for sure.
amazing to
Yeah,
see.
absolutely.
So what
Yeah, and
advice
then
would you?
you going.
Go ahead, buddy. Go ahead.
No, and then, so you going. So when you got accepted to the warrant officer program,
Knife and
like,
fork
did
school.
you get
Yeah.
any? Yeah, did you get any like a little bit of backlash for that, or were they like,
You
go?
know, truthfully, there have been a few other people who had already made it before me, so they welcomed me with open arms. So I might have been the most senior in my community, but I was young. So there were people who went through the class after me who were much more senior to me. So there were people who outranked me who went and became warrants before that, or and went LDO and went straight sick dark side. But
Yeah,
for the most part, I was welcomed with open arms. And I think it's just because I did have such a unique vantage point compared to all my colleagues. I think that closest to me was there was somebody who was still in when I got out who was one class behind me. So I mean there was like two bodies that were pretty close, but it was a good opportunity for me to stop being the door kicker and start making policy that affected the new generation of door kickers. And I was ready to do that by the time I put on
For
warrant.
sure.
yeah. Okay,
Absolutely.
okay,
So
awesome.
well,
Go
what
ahead,
what
Nick.
advice
Sorry, man.
what advice would you have for young women considering a career in military or the intel community?
Mm. So, I've been asked this before, and that's something I'll heavily caveat is like, it's going to be different for every woman. And I realize I've been fairly lucky because I've heard some horror stories about how some women have been treated. But I really do think there's a lot to be said about, you get what you put in. If you go in skittish, if you go in thinking things are going to be a certain way, chances are you're going to start seeing that. Chances are you're going to be either kind of treated with kid gloves or pushed to the side because
Yeah,
it's just not going to work for you. Or if you start, thinking everybody's the devil, they're going to start acting like the devil. Now, not saying that there's not legit complaints about people being douches, but I like and I hope to think they're few and far between.
Yeah.
So you really have to go in ready to pull your weight with an open mind. You being a woman should be a strength, but it shouldn't be a dividing factor, if that makes sense.
Definitely does.
yeah, I'd agree. Absolutely.
So
You said it yourself. It's been like awesome to see all the things that you've been a part of grow.
mm.
How has the Navy's approach to CI and human intel evolved over your career?
When I retired, it had the demand signal had exceeded capacity. We were desperately trying to fill seats in the class to try to fill billets out in the fleet. So many people had understood like what a critical gap we'd had for so long, because everybody relied on NCIS, which might not have been the best idea. But even when you had a phenomenal NCIS agent, there were so few of them. It's such a small force, you can't expect them to be everywhere all at once. But if you have a cadre who can actually do it, who are living the life with the people that they're trying to look out for, it's so much more effective. And commanders were starting to see that. We were starting to get asked to do more and more and more because they understood that this isn't something that's reactive, it's defensive. You needed to do it ahead of time. If you're not doing it already, you're already behind the power curve. So it was not just rewarding, it was validating. It's like, we've been screaming this for years, and to finally have the upper echelons recognize it was amazing. Now, whether or not they'll ever meet the very lofty goals we had for our community, that remains to be seen. But comparatively, 2006 was when we started. We didn't get our, NEC until 2007. It is still essentially a baby capability within the Navy. It's got a lot of legs under it.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
How this was a big one for me in your resume. How did it feel being named Intel Specialist of the Year in 2008?
Surreal.
Yeah, I bet.
I actually thought they were messing with me. It's like I didn't really believe it, but it was beyond an honor. And I got flown out to San Diego because I was with NSW, so they sent me to Warcom for the admiral to give me the award. So that was a huge deal. This 1-star's taking time out of his day to hand this award to me, and it was for the entire Navy. It's like that. It wasn't just for our community, it was Navy wide. So my accomplishments topped out against every other seagoing intelligence specialist in the entire Navy. And that, you want to talk about surreal.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like that was just me doing my job.
Yeah, see, you got me beat there. I got Blue Jacket Sailor of the Year for First Marine Division. First Marine Division. But yours that's way cooler than mine. I just did my job too.
Well, truthfully, I really do think it was just because, the circumstances. I was volunteering for deployments. I was spending all my time overseas. That it's really hard to compete. If you're just doing average, the day-to-day that a lot of the, shipboard
that gets noticed
life.
too. People notice that.
Yeah. And I think, being able to say, it was like, hey, she came back from a deployment and then turned around and did another one. And, oh, by the way, she caught, at M&F West number 7, yay. That looks pretty good.
Absolutely.
But I also do think that's also why I put on Chief that year, because I was very young, like seniority wise.
Yeah.
But because I spent so much time deployed, if it hadn't been for the fact that we were at war, I don't know if I would have made Chief, because I was one of those people where the job mattered to me more than playing the game. And I was quite content.
That's a big deal.
I was quite content to stay in my rank forever because I got to do the job.
Honestly, those are the people that I admire and have had the most success with in my military career. Is exactly how you just put that. The people that do the jam job and they're not ribbon chasers. They're just worried about affecting people at what they're doing, and they take it seriously. They're professionals, and hats off to you. That's awesome.
Well, that's also probably why going warrant was the best thing for me, because I really hadn't given it too much thought until a friend of mine said, well, you go warrants, you're kind of the voice of the chief in the wardroom. And then if you get pissed off at the chief's mess, you can go and piss on the master chief's desk, and there isn't a whole lot he can do about it. I'm like, you have my attention.
Perfect.
So yeah, it was very freeing to be able to do the job once I became a warrant, because, well, what was anybody going to do to me?
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I don't compete against any of the rest of you JOs. I might get ranked the same as you do, but I'm not competing against you. I don't compete against any of the chiefs. Game on.
So I haven't had the opportunity to read any of your books. How has your military experience kind of, I don't know, shaped them or influenced them?
So, we all tell stories. We all have unique experiences. And I think all of the personalities, the stories, the places I've gone, they've all had some influence on my writing.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, think of all the times you're like, I'm getting paid to do this.
Yeah.
Like kind of those moments, I draw a lot of inspiration from. And then, real world events, like anytime we have those pucker factors, anytime the hair on the back of your neck stands on end, that all is great fodder for the imagination. So for me, it only made sense to, try to take my storytelling into a different direction.
Did you have like a mentor to push you in that direction, or is that just something that you kind of just went after?
I just kind of did it. I've always fiddled around with writing, but it was nothing serious. It was just like little shit that I wrote for me. Like even like as a kid, keeping my diary, I would write it in narrative just because, well, it was fun,
Did you keep a diary through like your deployments?
I kept a diary off and on. I'm terrible at keeping like a journal. Like every time I start it, I'm like, I'm going to do it this time, and then
I'm the same way.
It kind of goes well.
Yeah, I guess.
But yeah, it's like that Baghdad deployment. That's the one where I finally decided, you know what? I'm going to give this a shot. Like, be real serious about. I'm going to try to tell a story. And at that point, it wasn't to publish. It was just, can I do it? And it was a lot of stutter steps, and eventually I found my groove. I figured out what was wrong, I figured out what I needed to do, and it worked. And then I got to the end and I'm like, well, what do I do with this now? Let's see what this publishing thing's like. And I initially wanted to do a traditional publishing and ended up going on deployment again. And while I was on deployment, I was like, nobody's carrying books, everybody's doing e-readers. I can self-publish and be done instead of continuing this, rejection cycle of trying to get one of the traditional ones.
Gotcha.
So I went that route. It was mainly because, everybody's doing e-readers, and then I have control over everything. So there was some comfort in knowing that, I had artistic control and creative license to do however I wanted. I didn't have to, bend to a publisher's desires.
Gotcha. So how did your books do? What had the most success, if you don't mind me asking?
My third book has definitely had the most success, and I
go ahead and plug it. What's the name?
So it's Shadow War. It is the third book in the Ella Anderson series, and you see that wonderful little gold medallion right there?
Yeah.
That is the Independent Press Award. So I actually won in the action adventure category for this year's Independent Press Awards.
Congrats.
So again, massive validation, because you see books everywhere. How do you get yours to stand out from the crowd? So for mine to stand out and win in its category is not just
of course
awesome, but yes, extremely validating. But I really do think my craft's gotten better with it. So first book, it was my debut. It's a special place in my heart. I get a little warm and fuzzy.
Of course.
But I look back at it now and I'm like, I could have done better. God, I can't believe I did that.
Yeah.
And then with book 2, so first book was Shadow Game. Second book's called The Deeper Shadow. And with that, I got all cocky. It's like, I got this now. I understand how this is supposed to work. I did not think about all the complications of writing a series, and all the unknowns of what that was actually going to entail to make it successful. So again, learning curve very high. So by book 3, I was like, okay, I know how my editor's going to kick my ass. I know what I need to do to make this a good, it could be a standalone, or somebody who's reading this series could pick it up. I got this. So I felt like I was more prepared.
Oh, that's definitely something to think about, huh? If they haven't followed this year. Yeah, okay.
Yep. But I think it ended up working out, because book 3 definitely, it's super fast paced. It's gotten a lot of great reviews and accolades. Andrews and Wilson, I don't know if you follow any of their work, but they do like the Tier 1 series.
Yep.
And
Yep, I've heard of them.
Sons of Valor, you know, the
Yep.
couple of Navy guys who got together and they write books now, but they're international bestsellers. They did a blurb for my book because Navy people are awesome, in case you didn't know. But
Right there, Nick.
supportive.
Hey, we're a department.
There you go. There. Oh, see, now you will admit to being Navy when it's complimentary, but any other time it's the men's department, right? Yeah.
You already know. You already know.
No, it's like we were kind of alluded to earlier, writing has been cathartic. So it's a creative outlet, yes. But anytime, you know, my blood starts going, I feel like I really want to strangle somebody, I can do it on the pages because, you know,
That's cool. It's a cool way to look at
my
it.
protagonist is, you know, a Black Ops agent. If I want to have her kill somebody, I absolutely can do that. And then it's therapeutic and not psycho. So
Gotcha.
like
It wasn't
yeah.
premeditated, I promise.
Yeah, there you go. It's like I swear all those search histories you see on my computer, I'm a writer, I'm an author, so I all had plausible deniability.
Oh, that's funny. So, okay. Yeah, that's cool way to think about it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's the direction I went with it. It's female protagonist, it's Black Ops, and it for thrillers, you know, and action books, there aren't too many females doing that.
very
And
true.
I know this is probably going to be shocking at this point, but I don't do damsels in distress, so there isn't.
Couldn't see that one
that in
coming.
my books.
Yeah.
You don't say.
Yeah, shocking.
So, what's the plans on the horizon? What do you got planned for the future? What's coming up?
Finishing book 4, and I you know, I'm back in school. I am pursuing my bachelor's degree in screenwriting with the Los
cool.
Angeles Film School.
Very cool.
Very.
Awesome.
I've had a couple of great opportunities, you know, kind of touching into Hollywood and the entertainment industry. And I've had some doors start to open for me, but then they look at my resume and go, you don't have any technical experience, so we don't think we can get you past the studio. And that's as far as I've made it. And well, with our background, I was like, well, how do I fix this? All right, I'm going back to school. So that's what I did. I went ahead and figured, well, you know, LA Film School, that's where everybody goes, right? Okay, they got an online program, so I don't have to move to California, which is a plus.
Yeah, right.
And so I just decided to do it, and that's what I'm doing.
Awesome. Well, I definitely wish you the best. I think you have, you kind of have the blueprint written with your books. If you could follow that at all into the, you know, movie business, that'd be huge. That's a dream of mine. I would love to somehow bring my experience into a movie the way that I see it in my head. If I could just do that, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no, I'm right there with you. It's like people ask me all the time, well, what would it be like? I was like, well, I'm okay with a female John Wick. Can we do that? I was like, that would make me happy. So
badass. I like it.
You definitely have the tenacity, I would say.
For sure.
I say, well, I also have the advantage with retirement. I can do what I want. It isn't one. I'm not the desperate teenager who's like this, or the 20-something who's like, I have to do this or to make a living, to pay rent, to do this. I don't have to do that. So I can literally do it just because I want to. And I think that gives me an advantage because I can, it takes that stress out of it. It's like, I'm doing it because this is what I want to do.
That's huge. When you can really love what you're doing, that brings the best out of you, for sure. Mm-hmm. Well, that's all I got for you, Doc. You got anything else over there?
No, I really appreciate you coming on. It was awesome, and obviously we'd love to have you on again.
Yeah, for sure. Would love to follow your journey, and if maybe after the next book, would love to plug it for you. And, any future you have in the film industry, we'll definitely promote you as much as we can.
I appreciate that. I guess I could do that. Like, probably going to put it out on social media here soon, but since I'm talking to you guys first, you know, if anybody makes it to the end of this, they get to hear the title of my next book first. So the book 4 in my series is going to be called A New Game.
New game. There you have it. Hard to Kill, guys. Just
So
plugging it
there-
first on Hard to Kill. New
There you go.
game.
There's your exclusive.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you
Fucking
very
appreciate
much.
it.
Well, Chief Warrant Officer Emma Adair, episode 68 of the Hard to Kill podcast. There you have it. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. It has been a pleasure. I wish you the best,
Thank
and
you.
hopefully
Thank
we
you.
will talk again soon.
Thank you so much, Nick. And Doc, it's been fun.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. It was awesome.
What's your guys' thing? I mean, we have Hoorah and Semper Fi. Don't you have like a
Semper Fortis. Well, that's
Semper
formal.
Fortis? Okay.
You know, hoo-yah is always a thing with the
Ooh,
Navy,
hoo-yah.
but
I
yeah,
like it.
hoo-yah.
There you go. Have a good night, guys.
You too. Take care, man.